The ship came without warning on a cold Tuesday morning in the year 2147, and it was bigger than anything humanity had ever seen before. Commander Elena Torres stood on the observation deck of the Luna station and watched as the massive vessel materialized from nothing, stretching 3 kilometers across the dark void of space like a metal mountain floating among the stars. She had served in Earth's orbital defense network for 20 years, and she had seen many strange things, but nothing like this alien craft that seemed to bend light around its impossible shape. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "And wake up every military leader on the planet right now." Within minutes, every television screen, every phone, every computer, and every radio on Earth went dark for exactly 3 seconds before an alien face appeared on all of them at once. The creature was tall and insectoid, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected 1,000 tiny images of the human staring back at it. Its translator device hummed as it began to speak in a cold and emotionless voice that sent chills through billions of hearts. "I am Ambassador Vareth Keen of the Galactic Council," the alien announced, "and I bring judgment upon your species." In cities across the world, people stopped in their tracks and looked up at giant screens. In Tokyo, a mother held her daughter close. In New York, traffic came to a complete halt. In Lagos, General Amara Okonkwo stood in her office and clenched her fists as she listened to every word. "The Galactic Council has observed your species for 200 of your Earth years," Vareth Keen continued, "and we have reached a unanimous decision regarding your future. Humanity has been classified as a Category 7 aggressor species, which means you are too violent, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to ever be allowed to travel among the stars." The alien paused and let those words sink into the minds of 8 billion humans before continuing with its terrible message. "You will dismantle all of your space-capable vessels within 30 Earth days. You will surrender all nuclear weapons and advanced military technology to Council representatives. Your planet will be placed under permanent quarantine, and no human will ever leave Earth's atmosphere again. This is not a negotiation or a request. This is your sentence." Secretary General Chun Wei-lin of the United Earth Coalition sat in his office in Geneva and felt the weight of an entire species pressing down on his shoulders. He was 63 years old and had spent his whole life working toward peace and unity among the nations of Earth. Now an alien empire was telling him that none of it mattered. "And if we refuse?" he asked the screen, knowing that billions were watching him speak for all of humanity. Vareth Keen's compound eyes seemed to glitter with something that might have been amusement or might have been contempt. "Non-compliance will result in the activation of cleansing protocol," the alien answered. "Your cities will be reduced to ash, your oceans will be boiled away, and your species will join the 17 others who thought they could resist the will of the Council. You have 30 days to decide if you wish to live as prisoners or die as fools." The transmission ended, and chaos erupted across the planet. In the United Earth Coalition's emergency bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, military leaders from every nation on Earth gathered around a massive circular table. Generals shouted at admirals, and politicians screamed at scientists. Some demanded immediate surrender, arguing that survival as prisoners was better than extinction. Others pounded their fists and swore that humanity would never bow to alien masters. General Amara Okonkwo sat quietly and listened to everyone argue while her mind raced through possibilities. She was 51 years old, born in Nigeria, and had risen through the ranks of Earth's military through sheer brilliance and determination. Now she commanded the entire orbital defense network, which consisted of 40 warships and 200 weapon platforms that suddenly seemed very small compared to the alien vessel in orbit. "We need more information," she finally said, and her calm voice cut through the noise like a knife. We know nothing about these aliens except what they want us to know. Before we make any decisions, we need to understand what we are truly facing." Secretary General Chun nodded and ordered Earth's intelligence agencies to work together for the first time in history. Hackers, spies, scientists, and analysts from every nation began studying the alien ship and intercepting every signal they could find. 3 days later, General Okonkwo received a report that changed everything. A team of cryptographers had managed to decode fragments of communications between Vorathkeen and the Galactic Council. What they found made Okonkwo's blood run cold. The quarantine was not protection at all. It was a slow death sentence. Every species that had been quarantined in the past 3,000 years had been quietly harvested for resources within a century. Their planets were stripped of minerals. Their people were used as slave labor, and then they were left to die on barren rocks. "They never intended to let us live," Okonkwo said to Secretary General Chun in a private meeting. "Compliance means extinction, just slower and more painful than resistance." Chun closed his eyes and took a deep breath before asking the question that would determine humanity's fate. "Can we win?" Okonkwo shook her head honestly. "Probably not," she admitted, "but we can make them bleed. We can hurt them so badly that other species might see it and find the courage to fight back. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to survive that nobody has thought of yet." Chun stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the mountains that humanity had climbed and conquered so long ago. He thought about his grandchildren and about all the children on Earth who deserved a chance to reach for the stars. "Then we fight," he said quietly. On day 29, Secretary General Chun Wei-lin stood before the cameras and addressed both humanity and the alien ship watching from orbit. His voice was steady and his eyes were fierce as he spoke words that would echo through history. "Ambassador Vorathkeen, you came to our world and demanded that we kneel. You threatened us with extinction and expected us to beg for mercy. But you made one terrible mistake. You assumed that humans fear death more than we love freedom. You were wrong." He paused and let the silence stretch across the void between worlds. "Humanity does not kneel. You gave us 30 days to surrender. Instead, we used those 30 days to prepare. We are not your prisoners, and we are not your victims. We are the species that tamed fire, split the atom, and walked on the moon. We have fought wars and survived plagues and built wonders that would make your ancestors weep with envy." Around the world, people gathered in streets and squares to watch their leader speak. Soldiers stood at attention. Children held their parents' hands. And in orbit, 40 human warships powered up their weapons and aimed them at the alien vessel. "You have 30 days, Chun declared with fire in his eyes. "So do we. And when those days are done, you will learn why the galaxy should have feared humanity all along." The transmission ended, and across Earth, billions of voices rose as one in a roar of defiance that shook the very heavens. The war for humanity's survival had begun. 28 days remained before the deadline, and Earth transformed into a war machine unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. In a secret bunker deep beneath Mount Fuji in Japan, Dr. Yuki Tanaka stared at equations that danced across her holographic display. She was 44 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair, and 5 years ago, the scientific community had laughed at her theories about exotic matter destabilization. They called her crazy and said her ideas violated the basic laws of physics. Now those same scientists were begging her to save humanity. "The council ships use exotic matter in their hull construction," she explained to General Okonkwo, who had flown across the world to meet her in person. "It makes them nearly indestructible against conventional weapons. But my Cascade warheads could theoretically destabilize that exotic matter and cause it to unravel at the molecular level." "Theoretically?" Okonkwo asked with one eyebrow raised. Desha Tanaka sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. I have never built one before, she admitted. I need 28 days to turn theory into reality, and I need every resource Earth can provide. Even then, I cannot promise it will work. You have everything you need, Okonkwo declared. Every scientist, every factory, every gram of material on this planet is at your disposal. Just give us a weapon that can hurt them. While Dr. Tanaka worked on her impossible weapon, Admiral James Reeves took command of Earth's orbital fleet. He was 60 years old with a scarred face and a reputation for never retreating from any battle. His fellow officers called him Ironside because nothing seemed to break his will. He gathered his captains in the war room of the battleship Defiant and studied the holographic display showing the alien ship and the approaching cleansing fleet. 40 ships against an empire that spans thousands of star systems. Captain Yusuf Hassan said grimly. Those are not good odds, Admiral. Reeves nodded and stroked his gray beard while he thought. We cannot match their technology or their numbers, he agreed. So we will overwhelm them with missiles instead. I call it swarm doctrine. We will build thousands of small unmanned platforms, each carrying dozens of warheads. When the battle begins, we will fill space with so much fire that their point defense systems will be unable to track it all. Can we build enough in 28 days? Another captain asked. We will not sleep until it is done, Reeves answered with fierce determination. Factories across Earth roared to life as production lines switched from civilian goods to weapons of war. Men and women worked double shifts and triple shifts, knowing that every missile they built might save a life. Children wrote messages on warheads that would streak across space toward alien ships. Grandparents who remembered ancient wars shared their knowledge with young engineers. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth worked toward a single goal with perfect unity. But not everyone supported the fight. In the shadows, a group calling themselves the Compliant believed that resistance was suicide and that surrender was the only path to survival. They whispered in dark corners and plotted ways to stop the war before it could begin. Their leader was a former senator named Marcus Webb, who had made secret contact with Ambassador Varathkeen and promised to deliver Earth's surrender in exchange for his own safety. On day 15, a bomb exploded in Dr. Tanaka's laboratory. The blast killed 3 of her assistants and destroyed weeks of work. Tanaka herself survived only because she had stepped out for tea just minutes before the explosion. She stood in the smoking ruins of her life's work with tears streaming down her face while security forces searched for the saboteurs. They want us to give up, she whispered to herself, but I refuse. General Okonkwo arrived within hours and found Tanaka already rebuilding her equipment from scraps. I will double your security, Okonkwo promised. No one will touch you again. I do not need protection, Tanaka said with fire in her eyes. I need time. Every hour I spend on security is an hour I cannot spend on the Cascade warheads. Okonkwo smiled despite the terrible situation. Then I will give you both, she said. The investigation traced the bombing to the Compliant, and security forces arrested dozens of collaborators across the globe. Marcus Webb fled to his private bunker, still believing that the aliens would reward his betrayal. He would learn the truth about alien gratitude soon enough. Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, Ambassador Varathkeen watched the human preparations with growing unease. He had expected panic and surrender, not defiance and determination. He reported to the Galactic Council that the humans were building weapons and organizing their pathetic fleet for battle. The council elders laughed at his concerns. Every primitive species believes they can fight back, the High Elder replied through the communication screen. The Kreth tried it 400 years ago, and now their survivors dig in our minds. The Luminari launched 1,000 ships against us, and we destroyed them in an afternoon. These humans will be no different. With respect, High Elder, Varathkeen said carefully, I have studied these creatures for 2 centuries. They are not like the others. They fight among themselves constantly, yet when threatened from outside, they unite with terrifying speed. They have survived disasters that would have broken other species. They adapt and evolve and refuse to accept defeat. Are you afraid of these hairless apes? The High Elder mocked. I am cautious, Varathkeen answered. Perhaps we should offer them a place in the council instead of quarantine. Their aggression could be useful against our enemies. The High Elder's laughter echoed through the transmission. Send the cleansing fleet, he ordered. 200 warships will teach these humans the price of defiance. And when their world burns, you will see how foolish your concerns were. The transmission ended, and Varathkeen stood alone in his quarters with a feeling he had not experienced in centuries. Was it doubt? Was it fear? Or was it something else entirely? On Earth, General Okonkwo visited her elderly mother in Lagos on day 27. The old woman was 90 years old and had lived through wars and plagues and the collapse of nations. Now she sat in her small garden and watched her daughter approach with eyes that still sparkled with wisdom. You did not come to say goodbye, her mother said. You came to find courage. Okonkwo knelt beside her mother and felt like a child again. I might be sending our entire species to extinction, she admitted. What if I am wrong? What if surrender really is the better choice? Her mother took her hand and squeezed it gently. When I was a girl, my grandmother told me stories about our ancestors who were taken as slaves across the ocean, the old woman said. They could have surrendered and accepted their chains forever. Instead, they fought and died and dreamed of freedom until their children finally won it. Survival without freedom is just a slower death. You know this in your heart. Okonkwo embraced her mother and felt strength flow back into her soul. I will make them proud, she whispered. On day 28, Dr. Tanaka completed the first Cascade warhead and tested it on a fragment of exotic matter recovered from an ancient alien probe. The fragment dissolved into dust in seconds. Tanaka laughed and cried at the same time as her team cheered around her. It works, she shouted into her communicator. General Okonkwo, the Cascade warheads work. Across the solar system, the cleansing fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. 200 alien warships that had burned dozens of worlds to ash now formed a wall of death at the edge of human space. High Admiral Lessex, the fleet commander, broadcast his arrival to Earth with contempt dripping from every word. Your time has ended, humans. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will make them last for generations. Admiral Reeves sat in the command chair of the Defiant and smiled grimly. All stations report ready, his officers announced. 10,000 missiles waited on orbital platforms. 40 warships powered their engines. Billions of humans held their breath and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Reeves opened a channel to every ship in his fleet and spoke the words that would echo through history. All stations, this is Admiral Reeves. They came to our home and threatened our families. They called us primitive and expected us to beg. Today, we show them what humanity is made of. All stations, launch everything. The sky above Earth erupted in fire as humanity answered the alien ultimatum with 10,000 missiles. Space itself seemed to catch fire as 10,000 missiles streaked toward the cleansing fleet in a wave of human defiance. High Admiral Lessex watched the swarm approach on his tactical display and felt nothing but contempt for these primitive creatures. His fleet had destroyed civilizations that were old when humans still lived in caves. These missiles were nothing but the desperate screams of a doomed species. Point defense systems will handle this, he announced to his bridge crew. Do not even raise the shields. Let these animals waste their ammunition. The alien point defense systems activated with devastating efficiency, shredding hundreds of missiles per second with beams of concentrated energy. But the humans had learned something important during their frantic preparations. They had learned that alien point defense systems were designed to handle dozens of missiles, maybe hundreds, but not thousands. The first wave of missiles died in brilliant explosions that lit up the void. The second wave pushed through the gaps left by overwhelmed defense systems. The third wave struck home. 12 alien warships exploded in the first 30 seconds of battle. Essex stared at his display in disbelief as damage reports flooded his communication channels. In 3,000 years of cleansing operations, no quarantine species had ever destroyed a single council vessel. These humans had killed 12 in half a minute. "Raise all shields," he screamed. "Full combat protocols. These primitives will pay for every ship they have taken." The cleansing fleet roared to life with weapons that bent gravity and twisted space. Beams of concentrated destruction lanced toward Earth's orbital platforms, and humanity began to die. The station Luna 7 vanished in a flash of light, taking 2,000 souls with it. The defense platform Atlas crumpled like paper and fell toward Earth in a trail of fire. Admiral Reeves watched his people die and felt rage burning in his chest. But he did not let emotion cloud his judgment. He had known from the beginning that humanity could not win a straight fight against the Council's technology. The plan had never been to defeat them ship to ship. "All vessels, execute swarm pattern Delta," he ordered. "Keep them focused on us while the second wave launches." Human warships scattered like leaves in a storm, each one trailing dozens of smaller missile platforms. The aliens could not track them all, and every missile that got through cost them another ship. But the price was terrible. The destroyer Valiant took a direct hit and broke apart. The cruiser Hope lasted only 10 minutes before a gravity beam tore it in half. Captain Yusuf Hassan stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the battle unfold with calculating eyes. He was 38 years old, with a wife and 2 daughters waiting for him on Earth, and he knew he would never see them again. But he also knew that his death could mean everything if he used it wisely. "Captain, the alien flagship is coordinating their shield harmonics," his tactical officer reported. "If we could disable it, their shields would fall out of sync." Hassan studied the massive alien command ship at the center of the enemy formation. It was protected by a dozen escorts and a shield that could probably survive a nuclear blast. Getting close enough to hurt it would be suicide. He thought of his daughters and the world they deserved to inherit. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "I am ordering an immediate evacuation. Get to the escape pods now." That is a direct order. His crew protested and demanded to stay, but Hassan silenced them with a look. "Earth needs survivors to rebuild," he said firmly. "You will live to fight another day. Now go." The crew evacuated in minutes, leaving Hassan alone on the bridge of the greatest warship humanity had ever built. He took a deep breath and aimed the Defiant directly at the alien flagship. "Defiant to all Earth vessels," he broadcast on an open channel. "It has been an honor to serve with you. Now watch what one human can do." The Defiant accelerated to maximum speed and plunged into the heart of the enemy formation. Alien ships fired at it from every direction, but Hassan flew with impossible skill, dodging and weaving through a storm of destruction. He reached the flagship shield perimeter and activated the emergency overload on the Defiant's reactor. The explosion was visible from Earth. The alien flagship shields collapsed, and the shockwave damaged 3 escort vessels. High Admiral Essex was thrown across his bridge as emergency alarms screamed. For the first time in his long career, he felt fear. "What manner of creatures are these?" he gasped. In the chaos that followed, Dr. Tanaka's Cascade warheads found their moment. A specially designed missile, carrying the experimental weapon, slipped through the disrupted alien formation and struck a Council dreadnought directly on its hull. The exotic matter that made the ship nearly indestructible suddenly became its doom. The destabilization spread like a disease, molecule by molecule, as the alien vessel simply fell apart. But it did not stop there. The cascade effect jumped to two neighboring ships that were too close to escape. They unraveled in seconds, their crews screaming as their vessels dissolved around them. The alien fleet recoiled in horror at a weapon they had never imagined possible. "What is happening?" Essex demanded. "Unknown weapon, Admiral," his science officer reported with panic in his voice. "It is destabilizing our exotic matter hull components. We have no defense against it." For the first time, the cleansing fleet hesitated. Admiral Reeves saw his chance and pressed the attack. Human ships launched every remaining Cascade warhead at the enemy formation. 3 more alien vessels unraveled before Essex could organize a response. But the Council's technology was still superior, and their commander was no fool. "All ships, increase spacing to prevent Cascade transfer," Essex ordered. "Target the human weapon platforms first. Destroy the source of those warheads." The alien fleet adapted with terrifying speed. Concentrated fire eliminated the platforms carrying Cascade missiles, and the tide of battle turned once again. Human ships began falling faster than they could be replaced. The cruiser Horizon exploded. The destroyer Vengeance was cut in half. One by one, Earth's defenders died. General Okonkwo watched the battle from her command center beneath the Swiss Alps and felt despair creeping into her heart. They had hurt the enemy badly, far worse than anyone had expected, but it was not enough. The cleansing fleet was still coming, and humanity was running out of ships. "We have 18 vessels remaining," her aide reported grimly. "The Cascade warheads are depleted." Admiral Reeves requests permission to retreat and regroup. "Retreat to where?" Okonkwo asked bitterly. "They will follow us to Earth and burn everything." She closed her eyes and made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. "Contact Project Prometheus," she ordered. "Tell them to activate the beacon." Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that officially did not exist, a team of engineers received the order they had been waiting for. They powered up a device that Dr. Tanaka had designed in secret, a device that had nothing to do with weapons. It was a faster-than-light communication beacon, and it carried a simple message to every quarantined world in the galaxy. "This is Earth. We are under attack by the Galactic Council, and we are fighting back. We have destroyed 23 of their ships. We have weapons that can hurt them. You are not alone. If you can hear this, fight back. Rise up. The Council is not invincible. We are proof." The message repeated on every frequency, spreading across thousands of light years in seconds. High Admiral Essex intercepted the transmission and laughed. "Impressive," he broadcast to Earth. "Truly impressive. You have surprised us today, humans. But your little signal will change nothing. The quarantined species are broken and beaten. They will not rise, and they will not save you. Your extinction will now be remembered, but it will still be extinction." The cleansing fleet resumed its advance toward Earth, reduced but still overwhelming. 177 ships against 18 human survivors. Admiral Reeves stood on the bridge of his damaged destroyer and prepared for humanity's last stand. "All remaining vessels, form up on my position," he ordered. "We will make them pay for every inch." But General Okonkwo smiled in her command center because she knew something that Essex did not. The beacon was not meant to bring immediate rescue. It was meant to plant a seed of hope in the hearts of every enslaved species in the galaxy. And somewhere out there, on a dozen quarantined worlds, that seed was already beginning to grow. The battle was lost, but the war was just beginning. The beacon's signal raced across the galaxy at speeds that defied physics, carrying hope to worlds that had forgotten what hope felt like. On Krethax Prime, a dusty world of red deserts and towering mesas, the reptilian Kreth people had lived under council quarantine for 400 years. Their once proud civilization had been reduced to mining colonies, where they dug precious minerals from their own planet for alien masters. Their warriors had been disarmed, their leaders executed, and their spirits broken by generations of slavery. Elder Scaros was 700 years old, ancient even by Kreth standards, and he remembered the days before the council came. He remembered when his people flew among the stars and feared nothing. Now he sat in an underground chamber with other elders and watched the human transmission play on a stolen communication device. The footage showed human missiles tearing through alien ships. It showed the Cascade warheads dissolving council dreadnoughts. It showed Secretary General Chen's defiant speech and Admiral Reeves ordering the attack. Most importantly, it showed that the council could bleed. 23 ships, one of the younger elders whispered in disbelief. These soft-skinned creatures destroyed 23 council vessels? More than we ever managed, another elder admitted with shame. We surrendered after losing a single battle. Scaros rose slowly, his ancient bones creaking with the effort, and looked at his people with eyes that suddenly burned with fire. Our ancestors would weep to see what we have become, he declared. We tell ourselves that surrender saved our people, but what are we saving? Slaves who dig in the dirt while our children forget what freedom means. He pointed at the screen where Captain Hassan's final charge played on a loop. If these humans can bleed them, so can we. Scaros roared. The council has only 100 guards on our entire planet. They never expected us to fight because they broke our spirits so long ago. But I say our spirits are not broken. I say they are only sleeping. The chamber erupted in voices both fearful and excited. Some elders counseled caution, warning that rebellion meant death. Others demanded weapons and glory. The debate raged until a young warrior named Vrex pushed through the crowd. I have contacted the mining crews across the planet, Vrex announced. Every Kreth with hands to hold a weapon is ready to fight. We have been hiding tools and storing explosives for generations, waiting for a sign. This is that sign. Scaros smiled for the first time in centuries. Then let us show the council that the Kreth still have fire in their blood. Within hours, the Kreth uprising began. Mining charges meant for rock were used against orbital monitors. Hidden weapons were pulled from secret caches. Council guards who had grown lazy from centuries of easy control suddenly found themselves facing an army of angry reptiles who had nothing left to lose. The Kreth took their planet back in 3 days. But Krethax Prime was only the beginning. On Luminara, a water world of endless oceans and floating cities, the jellyfish-like Luminari received the human beacon and wept tears of bioluminescent joy. They had been quarantined for 600 years after their fleet was destroyed in a single afternoon of horror. Their population had been reduced to a fraction of its former glory, and they had accepted that their species would slowly fade into extinction. The human transmission changed everything. They fight with missiles and determination. The Luminari High Choir sang in their harmonic language. They are young and small and should be weak, but they burn with a light we had forgotten. The Luminari had no weapons left, but they had something more valuable. They had knowledge. Before the quarantine, they had been the greatest scientists in their sector, and they had hidden their research from the Council in crystalline data vaults beneath their deepest oceans. Send everything to the humans, the High Choir decided. Send them our shield algorithms, our propulsion theories, our sensor designs. If they survive, they will carry our light forward. On Varax, a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, the four-armed Varax people received the beacon in their underground cities. They had been quarantined for only 50 years, and they still remembered freedom. They had hidden warships in the ice, waiting for a moment that many believed would never come. The moment is now, War Chief Thraka declared. Launch the fleet! 12 Varax warships, old but still deadly, rose from their icy graves and joined the growing storm. Across the galaxy, on a dozen quarantined worlds, the same scene repeated. Species that had been beaten and broken found new courage in humanity's defiance. Some had ships, some had weapons, some had only their hands and their rage, but all of them rose together. The Galactic Council watched in horror as their empire began to crumble. "This is impossible," the High Elder screamed in the council chambers. "How are they coordinating? How did they organize so quickly?" "The human beacon," an advisor explained nervously. "It gave them a rallying point, a symbol to unite behind. Every quarantine world is now in open rebellion. Then send fleets to crush them all." "We do not have enough ships," the advisor admitted. "The cleansing fleet is engaged at Earth. Our other forces are spread across the galaxy maintaining order. If we pull them back, more worlds will rebel." For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a threat it could not simply overwhelm with numbers. Back in the Sol system, the cleansing fleet had reached Earth orbit, and the bombardment had begun. Gravity beams struck the surface with devastating force. The city of Mumbai vanished in seconds. Paris burned. Sydney crumbled. Millions of humans died in the first hour of the attack, and millions more fled to underground shelters that offered little protection against alien weapons. Admiral Reeves fought on with his 18 remaining ships, but they were being picked off one by one. Every attack run cost him vessels he could not replace. Every minute brought humanity closer to extinction. General Okonkwo directed the defense from her bunker, watching cities die on her screens, while she ordered counterattacks that barely slowed the enemy advance. She had not slept in days, and her voice was hoarse from shouting orders, but she refused to give up. "The Cascade Warhead production facility is still operational," Dr. Tanaka reported from her rebuilt laboratory. "I can have another batch ready in 6 hours." "We might not last 6 minutes," Okonkwo replied grimly. Then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Vorath Keen watched the bombardment from his ship and felt something strange stirring in his chest. He had overseen dozens of cleansings, had watched species beg and plead and die, but he had never seen anything like the humans. They were losing. Their cities were burning, and their fleet was dying, and extinction was certain. But they did not surrender. They did not even slow down. Rescue crews pulled survivors from rubble, while enemy fire still fell around them. Soldiers manned anti-aircraft guns that they knew could not hurt the alien ships. Children helped carry wounded to shelters instead of hiding. Vorathkeen thought about his own species, the Thrix, who had been elevated by the Council 2,000 years ago. Before elevation, they had been like the humans, fierce and proud and free. Now they were obedient servants who had forgotten what it meant to fight for anything. "Is this what we lost?" he whispered to himself. He made a decision that would mark him as a traitor forever. He secretly transmitted the cleansing fleet's shield frequencies and attack patterns to Earth Command Center. He sent detailed maps of the flagship's weak points. He gave humanity every advantage he could provide without revealing himself. General Okonkwo received the transmission and stared at it in confusion. "Where did this come from?" she demanded. "Unknown source on the alien command ship," her communications officer reported. "It appears to be legitimate." Okonkwo did not understand why an alien would help them, but she was not foolish enough to reject a gift. "Update all our targeting solutions," she ordered, "and tell Dr. Tanaka to focus the next Cascade warheads on these coordinates." High Admiral Essex prepared the final bombardment that would crack Earth's crust and end humanity forever. His ships moved into position, and his weapons charged to full power. Then, his sensors screamed a warning. Admiral, multiple FTL signatures incoming. 200 contacts. Essex felt his blood run cold. Council reinforcements? He asked hopefully. Negative, Admiral. The signatures match quarantined species vessels. Kreth, Luminari, Barax, and others we do not recognize. The Liberation Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and filled Earth's sky with ships that had no right to exist. They were old and battered and held together by hope and desperation, but they were here. General Okonkwo stared at her displays in disbelief, then laughed with joy and relief. She opened a channel to the arriving fleet and spoke words that would be remembered for 10,000 years. Welcome to the war, cousins. Let us show them what the lesser species can do. The Second Battle of Seoul erupted with a fury that shook the foundations of the galaxy. 200 Liberation Fleet vessels crashed into the battered cleansing fleet like a wave of vengeance. Kreth warships that had slept beneath ice for decades fired weapons that their grandparents had built. Barax cruisers that had hidden in frozen moons screamed into battle with war cries that echoed across open channels. Smaller vessels from a dozen other species joined the chaos, each one carrying the desperate hope of their entire civilization. High Admiral Essex watched his tactical display fill with hostile contacts and felt true fear for the first time in his long career. All ships, defensive formation. He screamed, concentrate fire on the largest vessels. But the Liberation Fleet had learned from watching the human battle. They did not fly in neat formations that could be targeted easily. They swarmed and scattered and struck from every direction like angry insects, and they were not alone. Admiral Reeves rallied his surviving human ships and joined the attack. All Earth vessels, target the flagship's engines. He ordered, using the information that Varathkeen had secretly provided. Keep them from escaping. The battle raged across millions of kilometers of space. Alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Kreth. Warriors rammed their vessels into Council cruisers when their weapons failed. Luminari ships broadcast interference patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Barax gunners fired with 4 arms at once. Their accuracy legendary even after 50 years of hiding. Dihar Tanaka watched the battle from a Kreth command ship, holding a case containing the last batch of Cascade warheads. Elder Scaros had insisted on bringing her aboard personally, recognizing that her weapons could end the fight. The flagship is weakening, Scaros announced as another human attack run damaged the enemy command ship. If we can get close enough, your weapons will finish it. Tanaka nodded and tried to ignore the terror in her heart. She was a scientist, not a warrior, but she understood that some moments required everyone to fight. Then get me close, she said, with determination she did. Not feel. The Kreth ship dove into the heart of the battle, its old but sturdy hull absorbing hits that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Tanaka watched alien beams flash past the viewports and thought about her laboratory in Japan, about the colleagues she had lost in the bombing, about the generations of humans who would never exist if she failed. High Admiral Essex saw the Kreth ship approaching and recognized the threat. Destroy that vessel, he commanded. It carries their special weapons. A dozen cleansing ships turned their guns on the Kreth vessel. The first hits tore through the outer hull. The second volley knocked out the engines. The ship began to drift. Helpless and dying. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Scaros reported, green blood dripping from a wound on his head. Weapons are offline. We cannot reach the flagship. Tanaka looked at the Cascade warhead in her hands and made a decision. Do you have escape pods? She asked. Yes. but they cannot reach the flagship either. They do not need to, Tanaka said with a strange calmness. They only need to reach the debris field between us and them. I will do the rest. Scaros understood immediately and bowed his massive head. In respect, you would die for species you have never met? I would die for the future. Tanaka answered simply, for every child on every world who deserves to see the stars without fear. Is that not worth one life? She climbed into the escape pod with the Cascade warhead and launched toward the flagship. The tiny pod tumbled through the chaos of battle. Too small for the alien targeting systems to notice. Tanaka watched the massive enemy command ship grow larger and larger in her viewport. She thought about her parents, who had died believing she was crazy. She thought about the assistants who had given their lives protecting her work. She thought about General Okonkwo, who had believed in her when no one else would. This is for all of you, she whispered. The escape pod struck the flagship's weakened hull and embedded itself in the superstructure. Tanaka activated the Cascade warhead manually, knowing she had. Only seconds before the destabilization reached her. Tell them it worked. She transmitted to the Kreth ship. Tell them Yuki Tanaka says goodbye. The flagship began to unravel. Admiral Vesix had just enough time to scream before his body dissolved along with his ship. The cascade effect spread to the 3 escorts that had moved too close, destroying them as well. The heart of the cleansing fleet vanished in a storm of molecular destruction. The alien formation shattered. Ships that had never known defeat suddenly found themselves leaderless and terrified. Some tried to flee, but the Liberation Fleet cut off their escape. Others fought on with desperate fury. But without coordination, they were easy targets. The battle that should have ended humanity instead became the greatest victory the quarantined species had ever known. Ambassador Vorath Keen watched the destruction from his vessel and knew that the old order was dying. He could flee and pretend ignorance, or he could embrace the new galaxy being born. He opened a channel to the surviving council ships. This is Ambassador Vorath Keen, assuming command of all remaining forces. All ships will cease fire immediately and surrender to the Liberation Fleet. This war is over. Several captains protested, demanding that they fight to the death. Vorath Keen executed them through remote command overrides that only ambassadors possessed. I said the war is over, he repeated coldly. Any ship that continues fighting will be destroyed by my order. The Council's time has ended. Adapt or fall. The remaining cleansing vessels powered down their weapons and raised signals of surrender. The Liberation Fleet surrounded them but did not fire, honoring the peace even though they had every reason for vengeance. On Earth, the bombardment stopped, and billions of people wept with relief and grief. General Okonkwo stood in her command center and stared at the display showing the enemy surrender. She thought about Dr. Tanaka, who had given everything to make this moment possible. She thought about Captain Hassan, whose sacrifice had turned the tide. She thought about the 400 million humans who had died in the war. We won, she said quietly, the words feeling strange in her mouth. We actually won. The aftermath was complicated, as all victories are. The Galactic Council splintered into factions that fought among themselves for years. Hardliner species vowed revenge and retreated to their home systems. Moderate species sued for peace and opened diplomatic channels. 3 species defected entirely and requested to join the new alliance that was forming around Earth. On Earth itself, the recovery took decades. Cities had to be rebuilt. Populations had to be relocated. The trauma of near extinction scarred multiple generations, but humanity endured, as it always had. 1 year after the war, Earth hosted the first interspecies Liberation Summit in the rebuilt city of Geneva. Representatives from 16 species gathered to sign a document that would reshape galactic civilization. Secretary General Chun Wei-lin, gray and tired but still fierce, addressed the assembly. "We came together because we had no choice," he said. "The council gave us death, so we chose defiance. They expected us to break, but instead we found each other. Today we formalize what was born in battle, a partnership of free peoples who will never again bow to tyrants." The Free Worlds Compact was signed that day, creating a defensive alliance based on mutual respect instead of domination. Every species was equal. Every voice mattered. The mistakes of the council would not be repeated. 10 years later, General Amara Okonkwo, now retired and walking with a cane, visited the memorial on Mars. It was a massive structure of steel and glass, listing the name of every human who had died in the war. 400 million names covered walls that stretched for kilometers. At the center stood a statue, a steel fist rising from the red Martian soil, clutching a broken chain. The inscription beneath read, "They warned us. We answered. We endured." Okonkwo walked slowly along the walls, running her fingers over names she remembered. Hassan, Tanaka, thousands of others who had given everything. A small voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me?" She turned and saw a young Kreth child, barely 10 years old, with scales the color of sunset and eyes full of curiosity. The child's parents stood nearby, watching with gentle smiles. "Are you the general?" the child asked in careful English. "The one from the stories?" Okonkwo knelt slowly, her old knees protesting, and smiled at the child. "I am," she said. "What is your name, little one?" "Yuki," the child answered proudly. "My parents named me after the human scientist who saved our fleet." Tears welled in Okonkwo's eyes, but she blinked them away. "That is a beautiful name," she said. Dr. Tanaka would have been honored. The child tilted her head with curiosity. "Can I ask you something? My teacher says humans are not the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy. So why did you fight when you could have surrendered? Why did you risk everything when you might have lost?" Okonkwo thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "Because, little one, freedom is not given, it is taken. And it is always worth the cost. Your ancestors knew this, and so did mine. We fought because some things are more important than survival. We fought because we believe that creatures like you deserve a galaxy where they can dream without limits and reach for stars without fear." She gestured at the memorial around them.